The rain was hammering against the floor-to-ceiling windows of our Seattle office as I stared out at Pike Place Market, trying to process what I'd just heard in the emergency team meeting. 8 years. 8 years I'd spent building Marlin & Vale's crown jewel account, nurturing Dunstan worldwide from a hesitant prospect into a $4.2 million annual contract that represented nearly 40% of our firm's total revenue. And now Harriet Vale, my CEO and mentor, had just announced that her 26-year-old daughter Sloane, who'd been working here for exactly 7 days after wrapping up what she called her gap-year influencer journey, was being promoted to VP of Client Strategy. My new boss. I know this might seem sudden, Harriet continued, her silver hair perfectly styled despite the 6 a.m. meeting time, but we need next-generation leadership to guide our digital transformation. Sloane brings fresh perspectives from the social media landscape that, frankly, some of us dinosaurs need to learn from. I glanced around the mahogany conference table. Jonas Whitfield, our senior creative strategist and my closest ally, was staring at his coffee like it might reveal the meaning of life. The junior staff looked confused. And Sloane. She was scrolling through her phone, occasionally looking up to smile vacantly when people congratulated her. Noah, Harriet's voice cut through my mental fog, I know you've been carrying a heavy load with the Dunstan account. Now you'll have Sloane's strategic oversight to help elevate your execution. Strategic oversight. For an account I'd built from scratch through 18-hour days, countless red-eye flights to their corporate offices, and a relationship with their team that had taken years to cultivate. An account that required understanding luxury hospitality psychology, global market dynamics, and the subtle art of making billionaires feel understood. That sounds great, I managed, forcing my voice to remain steady. I'm excited to collaborate. Sloane finally looked up from her phone. OMG, Noah, I have so many ideas. Like, what if we did some kind of TikTok partnership? Hotels are so boring online. We need to make them, like, experimental and stuff. Experimental marketing. The thing I'd been doing for nearly a decade. The thing that had won us 3 industry awards last year alone. Absolutely, I said, my customer service smile locked in place. We should definitely explore all options. The meeting ended with Harriet gushing about synergistic leadership transitions while Sloane took selfies with her new business cards. As everyone filed out, she cornered me by the coffee station. So like, I know you've been doing this for a while, she said, her voice carrying that specific tone of someone who thinks they're being generous by acknowledging your existence. But I went to USC and studied communications, and I have like 200K followers, so I totally get brand engagement. I'm thinking for the Dunstan presentation next week, I should probably be the one presenting? You can support me with the technical stuff. The Dunstan presentation. The global rebranding pitch I'd been crafting for 3 months, involving market research across 4 continents and a creative concept that had taken our team hundreds of hours to develop. The presentation that would determine whether we renewed their contract or lost nearly half our business. Of course, I said. Whatever you think is best. She squealed, actually squealed, and bounced away in her designer heels. I stood there in the break area, watching the rain streak down the windows, and made a decision that would change everything. I wasn't going to explode. I wasn't going to storm into Harriet's office and demand justice. I was going to do something much more effective. I was going to leave. But I wasn't going to leave alone. My phone buzzed with a text from Leah Park, Dunstan's Director of Global Marketing and my primary contact for the past 4 years. Noah, heard there might be some changes on your team. We should talk before next week's presentation. Coffee tomorrow. I smiled for the first time all morning. Perfect timing. The next 3 weeks were a masterclass in strategic patience. While Sloane threw herself into optimizing our client engagement protocols, her words, I began what I privately called my soft exit strategy. In meetings, I started deferring to Sloane's judgment, even when, especially when, I knew she was wrong. When she insisted we add Instagrammable moment creation to our luxury hotel strategy, I nodded thoughtfully and said, that's an interesting angle. When she suggested we pivot the Dunstan campaign to target Gen Z travel influencers for a hotel chain whose average guest spent $800 per night and was over 45, I made notes and said we should definitely explore that demographic. Jonas caught on quickly. During our usual Thursday lunch at the Pike Place Chowder, he leaned across the table and said quietly, "You're playing a longer game here, aren't you?" I don't know what you mean, I said, spooning my clam chowder with deliberate calm. Noah, I've worked with you for 6 years. You've never once agreed to put social media influencers in a luxury hotel campaign without at least 3 counterarguments and a detailed demographic analysis. Either you've had a personality transplant, or you're documenting everything. He was right, of course. I had started documenting everything. Every email where Sloane overruled research-backed recommendations. Every meeting where she interrupted client feedback to talk about her latest Instagram strategy. Every decision that prioritized flash over substance. But the real breakthrough came during my coffee with Leah. We met at Victrola on Capitol Hill, away from the downtown business district where we might run into colleagues. Leah arrived 10 minutes early, as always, her dark hair pulled back in the no-nonsense style that had helped her climb from junior marketing associate to running global campaigns for a billion-dollar hospitality company. "So," she said after we'd ordered, "Harriet's daughter." "Yes. How's that transition going?" This was the moment where I could have vented, complained, or tried to poison the well. Instead, I chose the path that would serve me better in the long run. "It's an adjustment for everyone," I said carefully. "Change can be challenging, but I'm committed to making sure Dunstan gets the best possible service throughout any internal transitions." Leah studied my face. We'd worked together long enough that she could read between the lines. "Noah, I'm going to be direct. We've built something special over the past 4 years. The Melbourne campaign increased our occupancy rate by 23%. The loyalty program redesign you led brought back $12 million in revenue. Your team understands our brand better than our own internal marketing sometimes." She paused, stirring her courte-do slowly. "I'm concerned about maintaining that level of strategic partnership if the account leadership changes significantly." "What kind of concerns?" I asked. "Yesterday, Sloane called me to brainstorm the presentation. She spent 20 minutes explaining how we could use her TikTok connections to create viral hotel room tours. When I mentioned that our guest demographic skews heavily toward business travelers and luxury leisure, she told me I was thinking too traditionally and needed to embrace disruption. I managed not to wince. That's one perspective. "Noah, our guests don't want their $800 a night hotel experience to go viral on TikTok. They want privacy, sophistication, and personalized service. They want to feel special, not like content for teenagers." She leaned forward slightly. "If you ever decided to go independent, or if this partnership doesn't work out the way we're hoping, I want you to know that Dunstan values relationships over contracts. We work with people, not just companies." I felt a small thrill run through me, but I kept my expression neutral. "I appreciate that, Leah. Right now, I'm focused on making sure the transition goes smoothly and that Dunstan gets the attention you deserve." "Of course," she said. "Just keep that in mind." Over the following weeks, I watched Sloane systematically dismantle 4 years of careful relationship building. She rescheduled calls with Dunstan's European team to accommodate her Pilates classes. She changed the presentation format without consulting anyone, adding what she called interactive engagement moments that were basically audience polls about which hotel amenities looked most aesthetic. Most damaging of all, she rewrote the creative brief to emphasize authentic influencer partnerships and experimental content creation, completely missing the point of luxury hospitality marketing, making guests feel exclusive, not exploited for content. Meanwhile, I quietly updated my LinkedIn profile, refreshed my portfolio, and had casual coffee meetings with 3 freelancers I'd worked with on side projects. I researched business incorporation procedures in Washington state, looked into liability insurance for consultancies, and started sketching out what a lean, independent firm might look like. I also began having regular knowledge transfer calls with Leah, ostensibly to help her prepare for the upcoming presentation, but really to demonstrate my deep understanding of her business and my commitment to her success, regardless of corporate politics. 2 days before the Dunstan presentation, my phone lit up with a text from Leah. "Just finished our final prep call with Sloane. If you ever went solo, I'd follow you in a heartbeat. This can't be what partnership looks like." I stared at the message for a long moment, then saved it to a folder I'd created called New Ventures. The pieces were falling into place. The Dunstan presentation was scheduled for 10 a.m. on a Tuesday. By 10:45, I knew my time at Marlin and Vale was over. It started badly and got worse. Sloane had insisted on presenting via a new platform she'd discovered called Presentation Party that allowed for real-time audience engagement and social sharing. The platform crashed twice in the first 15 minutes. When we finally got the standard PowerPoint running, Sloane launched into what she clearly thought was a brilliant opening. So like, hospitality is totally having a moment right now, and we need to think about how Dunstan can capture that energy and make it, viral. I watched Leah's face carefully. Her professional smile remained intact, but I could see the slight tension around her eyes. Richard Dunstan Jr., the company's COO who joined the call from London, looked confused. When you say viral, could you elaborate on what that means for our brand positioning? Richard asked in his crisp British accent. Oh, absolutely. Sloane brightened, clicking to a slide I'd never seen before. So I've been analyzing the social media landscape, and hotels that don't embrace authentic content creation are basically invisible to younger demographics. We need to pivot toward experiential storytelling that encourages user-generated content and leveraged micro-influencer partnerships to drive organic engagement. She was reading directly from the slide, and I realized with growing horror that she'd copied marketing buzzwords from various blog posts without understanding what any of them meant in the context of luxury hospitality. For example, she continued, clicking to another unauthorized slide, we could create Instagram-worthy moments in every room. Like, what if guests could check in via TikTok? Or we could have influencers do hotel room tours and tag Dunstan in their stories. Leah and Richard exchanged a look that I recognized from 4 years of client meetings. It was the look that meant, are these people serious? Ms. Vale, Richard said carefully, our guests typically choose Dunstan precisely because we don't treat their experiences as content opportunities. Privacy and discretion are core to our brand promise. Right, totally, Sloane nodded enthusiastically, but like, privacy is so 2019. Authenticity is about sharing real moments and building community around experiences. I felt my professional soul leaving my body. This was a woman who had clearly never spent a night in a hotel that cost more than $200, explaining hospitality strategy to people who had built a billion-dollar luxury chain. The presentation continued for another excruciating 30 minutes. Sloane pitched influencer room takeovers, TikTok check-in challenges, and something called hotel aesthetic moodboarding that would encourage guests to photograph their rooms for social media contests. When she finished, the silence stretched long enough that I genuinely wondered if the video call had frozen. Finally, Leah spoke. Thank you for the creative approach. We'll need some time to digest these ideas and discuss them internally. After the call ended, Sloane turned to me with a huge smile. I think that went really well. They seemed super engaged with the social media strategy. I nodded non-committally and escaped to my office, where I sat staring at my computer screen for 20 minutes, processing what I'd just witnessed. The next morning, Harriet called a post-mortem meeting. She'd clearly heard from Dunstan, and she was not happy. I'm not sure what happened in yesterday's presentation, she began, her voice carrying the kind of controlled fury that I'd only heard twice in 8 years. But I got a call from Richard Dunstan expressing concerns about strategic alignment and suggesting we might want to reconsider the account leadership structure. She looked directly at me. Noah, as the senior account director, this reflects poorly on your ability to prepare and support your team. Client management is ultimately your responsibility. I felt Jonas shift uncomfortably in his seat. Sloane, meanwhile, was examining her manicure with intense concentration. I understand, I said calmly. What would you like me to do differently going forward? I want you to schedule a follow-up call with Dunstan this week. Clean this up. Show them that we're still the strategic partner they've relied on. That afternoon, I did schedule a call with Dunstan, but not the kind Harriet had in mind. Leah, I said when she picked up, I owe you an apology for yesterday. Noah, you weren't presenting. You don't owe me anything. I owe you honesty. That presentation didn't represent the strategic partnership you've invested in over the past 4 years, and I should have found a way to prevent it. There was a pause. What are you saying? I'm saying that I've been at M&V for 8 years, and I've never been more committed to excellence in luxury hospitality marketing than I am right now. But I'm also saying that I may not be able to deliver that excellence through this particular organizational structure much longer. Another pause, longer this time. Noah, are you thinking about making a change? I'm thinking about a lot of things. But mostly, I'm thinking about what would serve Dunstan best in the long term. If you were to go independent, she said slowly, what would that look like? I took a deep breath. This was the moment. It would look like the same strategic partnership you've had, but with more focus, more attention, and complete alignment between your needs and my capabilities. No organizational politics, no junior leadership making decisions about your brand. Just experienced, dedicated service from someone who understands luxury hospitality. I'd need to discuss this with Richard and the board, Leah said. But Noah, we've been talking internally about account management issues even before yesterday. Your name keeps coming up as the reason we stay with M&V. I understand. And Leah, whatever you decide, I want Dunstan to succeed. That's always been my primary concern. The next day, I walked into Harriet's office and handed her my resignation letter. 2 weeks' notice, I said simply. I've appreciated the opportunity to learn and grow here. Harriet looked genuinely shocked. Noah, if this is about the Sloane situation, we can work something out. Maybe a lateral move to a different account. It's not about any one situation, I said, which was technically true. It's about pursuing the next stage of my career. I've learned everything I can here, and it's time for a new challenge. You'll never survive on your own, she said, her surprise quickly turning to irritation. This industry is about relationships and resources. You can't compete with established firms. Maybe not, I said. But I'd like to try. During my 2-week notice period, I worked diligently on transition documents, organized all my files, and maintained perfect professional courtesy with everyone, including Sloane. I also incorporated Castor & Company as a Washington State LLC, obtained professional liability insurance, and set up a business bank account. On my last Wednesday at M&V, Leah called me on my personal phone. Noah, I've been authorized to offer Castor & Company a consulting agreement for Dunstan's global marketing strategy. We're prepared to transition all current contracts to your firm, effective next Monday. My heart hammered against my ribs, but I kept my voice steady. That's incredibly generous, Leah. Are you sure this is the right move for Dunstan? We've been sure since Tuesday's presentation. We work with people we trust, and we trust you. The paperwork will be ready for signature tomorrow. I closed my eyes and smiled. I'll be ready. On Friday, my last day at M&V, I cleaned out my office quietly. As I was packing my final box, Sloane appeared in my doorway. So I guess I'll be handling all the Dunstan stuff now, she said. Any tips? I looked at her for a moment, this 26-year-old who had no idea what was about to happen, who genuinely believed that confidence could substitute for competence, who had been handed opportunities she'd never had to earn. Just be yourself, I said. I'm sure that will work out perfectly. The following Monday morning, while I was setting up my home office and preparing for my first official day as an independent consultant, Harriet got a call from Richard Dunstan Jr. Dunstan Worldwide was terminating their contract with Marlin & Vale, effective immediately. They would be transitioning all marketing activities to Castor & Company, citing concerns about strategic alignment and account leadership. Jonas texted me at 11:30 a.m., "Holy shit, Noah. Harriet is losing her mind. She's screaming at Sloane in her office. Half the building can hear it." By Wednesday, I learned through industry contacts that Meridian Financial, another major M&V client, had also given notice. They'd heard about the Dunstan situation and decided they wanted to work with more established strategic partnerships. Within 2 weeks, Marlin & Vale had lost nearly 60% of their annual revenue. I didn't steal their biggest client. I just gave them somewhere better to go. 6 months later, I was reviewing quarterly reports in my new office in South Lake Union when Jonas called. "Noah, you need to hear this. M&V is shutting down the Pike Place office. Harriet's trying to sell what's left of the company to Ogilvy, but apparently the due diligence isn't going well. Too much client turnover, too much debt." I looked out my window at the Space Needle, feeling a complicated mix of satisfaction and genuine sadness. Marlin & Vale had been a good company once. Harriet had built something impressive over 2 decades, but she'd let family blind her to business reality. What about the staff? I asked. Most of the senior people have found other jobs. I heard Sloane is trying to launch her own social media consulting firm. She's calling it Authentic Brand Experiences or something. I almost laughed. Good for her. Noah, there's something else. The Seattle Marketing Awards are next week. Guess whose Dunstan campaign is nominated for Campaign of the Year? The campaign we'd launched 3 months ago had exceeded every benchmark. Occupancy rates were up 31% year-over-year, customer satisfaction scores had reached an all-time high, and the loyalty program redesign had generated over $18 million in additional revenue. But more importantly, I'd built exactly the kind of firm I'd envisioned during those long weeks of watching Sloane dismantle everything I'd worked for. Castor & Company stayed small, just me, 2 contract specialists, and a network of freelancers I could call on for specific projects. Every client got my personal attention. Every campaign reflected the deep strategic thinking that only comes from experience. The award ceremony was held at the Fairmont Olympic Hotel, fittingly one of Dunstan's competitor properties. I wore my best suit and tried not to think about the irony of celebrating the destruction of my former employer. Halfway through the cocktail reception, I saw her. Harriet Vale stood near the bar, still impeccably dressed, still commanding presence despite everything that had happened. She was talking to a group of junior marketers who clearly recognized her reputation, even if they didn't know about her recent troubles. Our eyes met across the room. For a moment, I considered avoiding the interaction entirely. But I'd never been one to shy away from uncomfortable conversations. I walked over and waited for a natural break in the conversation. "Hello, Harriet." "Noah." Her smile was perfectly professional, with just the slightest edge. "Congratulations on the nomination. I heard the Dunstan campaign performed very well." "Thank you." The client was very collaborative. It made all the difference. The junior marketers, sensing tension, gradually drifted away, leaving us alone near a display of ice sculptures. "You know," Harriet said, swirling her wine, "I always respected your work. Even when we disagreed about direction, I never questioned your competence." "I appreciate that. But what you did, taking our biggest client the day after you quit, that was cold, Noah. That was personal." I studied her face. This woman who had been my mentor and my boss for 8 years, who had taught me about client relationships and strategic thinking, who had also chosen family loyalty over business judgment when it mattered most. "Harriet, I never took anything that wasn't offered to me. Dunstan made their own decision based on their own experience. I didn't badmouth M&V, I didn't sabotage anyone, and I didn't breach any non-compete agreements. You manipulated the situation. I responded to the situation. There's a difference." She took a sip of wine, studying me over the rim of her glass. "And Sloane? What about her?" "She's struggling, Noah. The consulting firm isn't working out. The social media thing, she doesn't have the foundation for it. She's my daughter." I felt a flicker of sympathy, but only a flicker. "Harriet, I spent 8 years watching you build an incredible company through talent, hard work, and strategic thinking. Those same principles apply to everyone, regardless of their last name. She's young. She could have learned. Maybe. But not while she was in a position where other people had to pay for her education." Across the ballroom, they were starting to announce the award categories. Soon, they'd call Campaign of the Year. "Some accounts aren't just about contracts," I said, echoing the words I'd thought about for months. "They're about trust. And trust isn't something you can promote someone into, no matter how much you love them." Harriet nodded slowly, and for the first time since I'd quit, she looked genuinely tired. "I built that company for her, you know. I wanted her to have something." "I know. But you can't give someone else's respect as a gift. They have to earn it themselves." The MC's voice boomed across the ballroom, and the award for Campaign of the Year goes to Castor & Company for the Dunstan Worldwide Global Luxury Positioning Initiative. The applause was warm and genuine. As I walked toward the stage, I caught sight of Leah at a table near the front, smiling and applauding enthusiastically. Jonas was there too, having joined a different agency, giving me a thumbs up and a huge grin. At the podium, Holding the Crystal Award, I looked out at the sea of faces, people I'd worked with, competed against, learned from over the years. Thank you, I said into the microphone. This campaign succeeded because of an incredible client partnership built on mutual respect and shared vision. The best marketing doesn't happen when agencies try to impose their ideas on clients, but when both sides commit to understanding what excellence really looks like. I paused, catching sight of Harriet still standing by the bar, watching. Success in this industry isn't about who you know or what position you hold. It's about the work. It's about showing up every day with competence, integrity, and genuine care for the outcome. Everything else is just noise. The applause continued as I left the stage. Later, at the afterparty, several people approached me about potential projects. 2 junior employees from competing firms asked about opportunities at Castor and Company. But the moment I'll remember most came as I was leaving. In the hotel lobby, I passed a young woman on her phone, clearly upset. "Mom, it's not working," she was saying. "Nobody takes me seriously. They all just see me as the girl who got promoted too fast. I don't know what I'm doing." I didn't look back to confirm it was Sloane. I didn't need to. Outside, Seattle's late spring air was crisp and clean. The city lights reflected off Elliott Bay, and somewhere in the distance, I could hear the sound of ferries moving through the water, carrying people to new destinations, new opportunities, new chances to prove what they were capable of when they finally decided to do the work. I pulled out my phone and texted Leah, "Thank you for taking a chance on Castor and Company. Looking forward to our next campaign." Her response came back immediately, "Thank you for showing us what partnership really looks like. Here's to many more." I smiled, put my phone away, and walked toward my car, carrying my award and thinking about Monday morning. There was work to do, clients to serve, and campaigns to build. The right way this time. The only way that really mattered. With competence, integrity, and respect for everyone who chose to trust me with their success. That's not stealing. That's just business. Please note, this story is a work of fiction. Any resemblance to real persons, companies, or events is purely coincidental. All marketing strategies mentioned are for entertainment purposes only and should not be considered professional advice.